Keeps looking your eye. Did you zoom? Did you get that stay there?
Hi everyone. What I just showed you then was a short segment I made for one of the meLectures in 2013. And this combines some footage from an old school assignment that I made in Year 11 with some of the techniques such as titles and transitions that are available to me through the editing program I use these days. It was not terribly sophisticated, it was short and simple, but at the same time it communicated a lot of meaning. You may have taken from it a sense of nostalgia being evoked, a harking back to a more pure or innocent time in which the contemporary digital media we have now did not corrupt us so much. And this is important because it's a really commonplace strategy that's used by people who criticise, especially young people, and their use of social media. Another question I raised through the titles at the start was that of privacy. This idea that an image that's taken of us, or one that was taken of us a long time ago, can be put up online and remain there forever. Or is there also some kind of commentary about the relationship between so-called old and new media? In a sense, we often think of traditional media platforms as informing, both in their form and function, the new media platforms we use these days. But at the same time, this video seemed to flip that and was actually manipulating the old image, the traditional artifact, if you like, through digital media processes. So that could have been one interpretation as well. Was I demonising digital media? I certainly didn't intend to do that. Through the use of music and the slow motion editing and that common convention of harking back to the past, which was done in sort of a playful way, I at least intended to evoke a sense of ambiguity, to show that this YouTube culture that I was indirectly representing has both empowering potential, there's positive aspects, but also potential dangers. So I didn't want to make too serious a message out of just this little film clip. But you could have read that differently to how I might. My intention does not matter. As I said, I think of this as an indirect representation of YouTube culture, one that does not directly represent YouTube or the people that use it. But there are many, many direct representations in popular culture that we're exposed to on a daily basis. And I wanted to use this example of mine to help us move comfortably into Module 3, the focus of which is mediating new media. Because something really interesting and important that I noticed in seminars last year, when I asked people, could you please brainstorm just off the top of your heads some cultural texts that you've been exposed to, something you've read or listened to or seen in the past week that represents digital media, when I asked students this, very few students could actually come up with anything. And that's really significant. What I think it actually shows is that these things are becoming so common, so naturalised. We watch a film about online dating, we don't even think about it being a film about online dating. It actually reinforces what we've been talking about all trimester, that these things are normalised to the point that we don't really even see them anymore. And that's really significant. And the reason I've been doing all these Movie of the Week segments is not to see how progressively quickly I can talk in front of the camera, but to help you be aware of the many cultural representations of digital media that you're exposed to all of the time. And it's been great to see students contributing to the ALC201 Movie of the Week hashtag, and I do recommend that you check that out. But at the same time, this is just films, and usually feature films. There are so many genres, so many media, so many texts that we can look at in relation to this module. It's going to be frustrating that we've only got a couple of weeks on it. I know that some students hate the flexibility of having so much broad material that they can choose from, but it's exciting, it's very interesting, and you can bring your own interests to bear on this module. A lot of students struggled with the Module 3 exercise this last year, so I've actually added a week to studying this module. And the great thing about this meLecture is that Adam 1.0 did a fantastic job of it in 2013, if we do say so ourselves, so I'm going to leave the rest to him. We're moving on this week to Module 3 on cultural representations of digital media, mediating new media. What we've been looking at in the past weeks is a lot about how digital media applications in various settings used by various users impacts and generates meanings about often traditional media in various cultural settings. For example, museums. We looked at how digital media can complement and enhance the meanings that are constructed through traditional artifacts and exhibits. What we're looking at now is kind of the flip side of that. We're looking at how more traditional media sometimes generates meanings about digital media. And I explain this, why this is important in the study notes. Make sure you have a careful read of the study notes this week. The other significant part about the timing of this topic is that you've actually been engaging in the creation of cultural representations of your own of digital media. So what we'll be doing for this module over the next few weeks is using a methodology called textual analysis, and you've no doubt had some experience of this in other units, perhaps the first year media and communication units. Textual analysis, as I've noted in the study notes, is something that's been rejected by some of the proponents of Media Studies 2.0, and I started to make a justification for it in the study notes. But what I thought I'd do is also talk to someone who's a familiar face to you in this unit about this issue. Okay, I'm speaking to Dr. Deb Waterhouse-Watson, who gave a lecture for us recently on digital media and the law. Deb, I was wondering if you could give us your definition and explanation of what textual analysis is.
Textual analysis, it's about finding meanings in text. There's not one definitive meaning because texts are polysemic, means they have multiple meanings, multiple possible readings, but it is about finding a meaning from a text.
And you gestured there to the potential limitations of textual analysis. I'm wondering if you can say something more about that, but also about the potentialities of it.
Well, one limitation of textual analysis is that it is always subjective. It will always be influenced by our personal biases, and one person's interpretation, one person's analysis might be quite different from somebody else's, which doesn't necessarily mean that either one is invalid. What textual analysis does allow is for a critical reading of a text and the ways that it might position an audience that's below the level of consciousness, so that people aren't necessarily going to be aware of.
One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about this is you're currently an associate lecturer at Monash in an interdisciplinary position of literary, English literature and media studies, so you are perfectly situated to respond to this quotation. I'm going to read out a quotation which you haven't heard before from David Gauntlet's Kindle book, very recent publication. He writes that, quote, "A focus on the meaningful and sociological side of media studies also means that we are required to discourage the self-indulgent and pointless textual analysis which was once central to the average media studies textbook. Occasionally some commentators do manage to make interesting observations about the composition or meaning of a particular culturally significant text, but requiring our students to make pretentious statements about trivial aspects of unimportant bits of media content was always a silly idea and bound to draw sharp and reasonable attacks from critics of the discipline. The defence that this activity is parallel to what they do in literature studies was correct, but it's often a waste of time there too." So, what is your response, off the cuff? I know you haven't been prepared for this. What is your response to that kind of sentiment?
Well, probably my facial expression was fairly explanatory there. It was kind of laughter. I mean, to suggest that literary studies as a discipline is completely worthless, I mean, it's suggesting that, people should just write literature without having any understanding of how texts work, without having any understanding of what the conventions of literature are. And textual analysis, that's one of the things that it does. It's looking at the conventions of constructing texts and making meaning. And that's one of the things that's really critical for people who create great literature, who create really great texts. They understand how they work. And unpacking it through textual analysis is a really key way of being able to do that.
And that would be the case with some world-renowned authors, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Emily Dickinson, great reader. I'm not a massive fan of James Joyce, but he is renowned as an incredibly great writer. Again, a really great reader. The Bronte sisters, Charlotte, Emily, Anne, were prolific readers and critical readers, which is the key. They didn't just read books for the fun of it. They talked about them, they unpacked them, they took them apart as well. So it's a really critical part of creating texts.
Thank you very much. A key concept we're looking at this week is ideology. And to give you a definition of this, I'd like to quote Adam Brown from 2012, who wrote that ideology is a collection or system of views and values shared by a certain group of people. By the way, if you're doing some early Christmas shopping, please do consider this book. That's a very broad definition. And there's lots of different theoretical conceptualizations of what ideology is. It often has negative connotations. We're not necessarily thinking that way here. This week's movie of the week is Gamer. Many thanks to Nick for the nomination. This film's about prisoners who become puppets of online gamers who control their bodies in real-world bloodbath. Survive enough battles and you'll get set free, but usually you're just gonna die. This film actually stars Gerard Butler, who you may know from another role.
This is Sparta!
Sorry for getting hyper-masculine there, but this film does have a rather high body count. In fact, there's so much blood and gore it makes you want to play games instead.
Battlefield.
Is it really necessary?
Gears of War.
It's too much.
Resident Evil.
All the violence.
Call of Duty.
Okay, you've made your point.
Banjo-Kazooie.
Huh?
So in the end, Gamer glorifies what it seeks to critique and resolves everything with a happy ending. If you want something a little less conventional, have a look at Existence. It'll blow your mind and then refuse to put it back together again. Check it out.